Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be explaining kind of a little bit of a personal life story with you. I'm going to be going through a timeline of events, sharing with you how I was able to bootstrap my e-commerce business and bring it to $1 million in just under 3 years. If you guys don't know, my name's Lamar, and I'm doing about $900,000 on Amazon right now. I also have 3 Shopify accounts for each one of my brands that's each doing about another 5 to 10% of my total revenue. Then I also do consulting, and I do some PPC management for some 8-figure Amazon brands. I'm 29 years old, I turned 30 in September, and I've essentially bootstrapped my e-commerce business. I've taken it from 0 to $1 million in just under 3 years, and this video is going to be an explanation of how I just went about doing that. Before I jump into the video though, I also wanted to mention that I just came out with 2 courses. The first course is Everything Amazon FBA. It's a complete step-by-step process to how you can go out there and replicate the exact same success. And my second course is Amazon PPC. I've become pretty much an expert at Amazon PPC through trial and error with my own money and running other clients of mine's accounts. I've become an expert and I've refined my process for how to run and scale Amazon PPC campaigns for your next product launch. So if you're interested in that, please check out the links below. So I feel like we should start off this video, essentially at my childhood. I was born in a working class. My mom was an artist. My dad had a landscaping job while we were growing up. We went to a lot of craft shows together. I was always using my hands. I was either helping my mom with her artwork, or I was out in the yard or the garden, or helping my dad with different jobs around, doing landscaping or working with perennials. For most of my preschool and middle school years, I was actually homeschooled. Because my parents were constantly traveling due to all my mom's craft shows, we traveled around to all of her arts and craft shows trying to help her sell work. I guess you could say that that was kind of my first exposure to business. So I got a little bit of taste of what it meant to be an entrepreneur, or at least a small business owner. And not only did I get to see that, but I was also helping her. Whether it was simple things of just unloading the truck or helping them set up the booth, or was it helping the next door neighbor set up their booth, or making a couple extra dollars, doing errands for different exhibitors. I was constantly active. I was constantly motivated. I was constantly trying to help other people out and make some money at the same time. But I was essentially raised in a working class family, and one thing that I learned pretty quickly on was that I was going to have to work hard if I wanted to get ahead. Basically, in my early childhood, I saw my family struggling with money quite a bit. And I knew that when I grew up, when I had my own family, I didn't want to have to put my family through that same situation. I wanted to provide a better lifestyle for my family. I wanted to provide a better lifestyle for my parents. I essentially transitioned into public school because I wanted to make more friends and I wanted to have a little bit more of a social life. And that basically took me into high school. So in high school, the drive just continued to compound. I wanted to make money. I knew that I needed to have a side hustle or something that could get me going. So I started how I think most people start. I started to exchange my time for money. I became a paper boy. I'd get up very early in the morning and deliver the papers throughout my neighborhood. The only problem with this was that it was very hard to go on vacation, and if I wanted to sleep over at my friend's house, I essentially couldn't because I'd have to get up very early in the morning and make sure the paper got out. I was making pretty decent money, but overall it was kind of a sucky experience just because I was so restricted and confined to just living at home, getting up early in the morning and making these delivery routes. So this job slowly evolved into selling door-to-door subscriptions of the exact same newspaper. The newspaper essentially approached me and offered me a position of doing door-to-door sales. This was an after-school job, so some dude came around in a car, picked me up, and we go knocking on doors and sell subscriptions of the newspaper. This made me quite a bit of money because I was paid on commission, and I got really good at selling. I had my pitch down, and it went something along the lines of, hey, my name's Lamar, would you like a free copy of today's paper? And 9 times out of 10, someone's gonna say yes, they would take a free copy of today's paper. And then I'd go right into my sales script. And it worked. I sold quite a bit of newspaper subscriptions on commission. And this was also kind of the transition days between people having cell phones and like starting to read newspapers online. So it was a little bit earlier pre that stage. So people were still buying subscriptions of the newspaper and they're still getting the newspaper delivered to their door. But here again, I was putting in a lot of hours after school. I'd have to go door to door. I was getting paid on commission, which was great, but it was still an exchange of time for money. The more doors I could knock on, the more sales I could get and the more commission I'd earn. I did that for about 2.5 years, and as that time continued to evolve, less and less people started buying subscriptions because it was kind of that transition period that I just mentioned of people starting to read online instead of getting the newspaper delivered to their door. The next job that I had was a Domino's delivery boy. I had just gotten a used car, a Volvo, that I was able to purchase with the money that I made from selling subscriptions, and I decided to give a little bit more of a corporate structure experience a try. So I started working at Domino's as a delivery boy. I guess the biggest issue that I had with working at Domino's was just such a corporate structural environment. I had all these different levels of managers. I was working with a bunch of other employees that I really just didn't get along with. I felt like I was more motivated or driven than them, and we were all kind of just like on the same level. So I worked at Domino's for about a year, and during that time, I got offered a lifeguarding position, and then soon after that, a swim coach position. So I jumped at the opportunity, and that later led into me becoming a swim coach, which I really did enjoy coaching swimming. I got to interact with a lot of kids. I got to inspire them. I got to motivate them. I was kind of, I was a swim coach. I was a leader. And I do see a lot of similarities between coaching and management or coaching and leadership. I thought that there was a lot of interesting comparisons to that and what I do right now. And it's kind of funny because as I was a swim coach, I can remember thinking to myself and thinking back like, hey, I could teach people how to swim online, or is there some way that I could teach people how to swim online? I never did anything about it, but I making this and thinking about this video right now, I had that thought once before while I was actually coaching, just because I saw that the impact that I was having, and I really enjoyed seeing people succeed and inspiring them and trying to push them to do their greatest work. And in this case, it was swimming, and which was a sport that I was super passionate about. I was swimming myself, and I actually continued to swim in college. So after high school, I got into a liberal arts college up in Massachusetts. I actually got recruited for swimming, which helped pay for a lot of the financial side of affording to go to the school. I really didn't know what I wanted to study though. I just knew that I wanted to make money, and I was prepared to work pretty hard for it. So the closest thing to that was business management. So I essentially thought that I was going to be studying business management. However, when I showed up, I learned about a special track that they had. It was an entrepreneurship track. And this was really my first exposure to thinking about entrepreneurship or even starting my own business. And the reason for that was I feel like the whole startup scene really exploded with Mark Zuckerberg or Facebook. And that was really the first time that I had learned or became aware about like, oh, I see all these like apps and websites just exploding, and there is this like startup bubble or there's startup scene that's starting to happen. And it was just about that time I was going through high school and the first couple of years of college. So entrepreneurship and having your own startup was a relatively new idea in the sense that we think about it today. But I started to get really passionate about entrepreneurship. I saw it as the vehicle that was allow me to become my own boss, make a lot of money and provide back for my family. I also thought that becoming an entrepreneur, having your own business and building it to a successful level was probably, if not the hardest thing that anybody could do. And for some reason, I was really attracted to that. I wanted to do really hard things and prove to myself and other people that I can become successful, that I am able to achieve this. And somewhere in between there, I made the decision that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, and I just didn't want to build one business, but I wanted to build multiple businesses. I wanted to become a serial entrepreneur. I wanted to be able to come up with processes that allowed me not just to build one business, but to build multiple businesses and allow those businesses scale and grow on their own. Around the same time, I started to keep a log of different business ideas that I had. You know, I'd be walking down the street and interact with a certain restaurant or certain people, a conversation that I might have had, or a product idea that I might have had, and I would just start writing those things down and be like, oh, that's an interesting idea, for whatever it was. Everything from websites to apps to product ideas to services. It didn't really matter. I was just keeping a log of business ideas that I had. Somewhere in my sophomore and junior year in college, I realized that I had no international business experience or no international experience at all. I'd never been abroad. I've never really left much of the East Coast of the United States. And I knew that specifically, I knew that China and the United States were going to have a really important relationship to maintain during my lifetime. So I started to become curious about China. And actually, in my first semester of senior year, I was fortunate enough to get an abroad opportunity where I could visit China for 3 weeks. And I was in Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, each for about a week and a half. And I absolutely loved it. It was awesome. It was like one of the best experiences of my life. I was with all my friends and we were traveling together. We were going to different businesses. We were doing local Chinese things, and I was learning about the culture, and all of these new things were being exposed to me. And I was just completely, overwhelmed, but also at the same time, like super excited, and it would become later a passion for me of travel. So as you can imagine, I came back from China and I was super excited about the experience that I just had, and I wanted to start my own business. But like I said, I was also completely surrounded by all of these tech startups. I kept hearing about Facebook, Instagram, there's Foursquare at the time. Everybody was talking about apps. So I came back from that trip and I was like, I should probably start an app. Like, apps are all in the spotlight right now. People are seeing explosive growth. Like, I should probably start an app. So it was during my the remaining part of my senior year where I had an idea for an event application. It was essentially a TV guide for events. So anywhere that within your area, or let's say that you were standing within the center of the city, you could pull out the app, and within like a 2-3 mile radius, it would display all of the events going on around your area. Actually, to this day, I still think that this app could be wildly successful. So during my final semester of senior year, I was able to find a couple of programmers to help me build this app, and we were actually able to get a prototype out before I graduated, and we successfully got about 200-300 users to actually use and upload different events going on in the area. And it was working. We got a working prototype of this app. And that was really my first kind of real startup where I came up with the idea for the product. I found people to help me build the idea, and we were able to launch an actual product into the marketplace and get real users, real feedback on what we were doing. And that was really awesome for me. That was super enlightening. We never took it far beyond that because then I graduated and essentially I wanted to go back to China. And when I wanted to go back to China, everything else just kind of fell apart. But I essentially graduated from college and I had to make a choice. I had this app that was kind of getting like a little bit of traction, but I also had this like desire to go back to China. I just had such a great time of, visiting China, and I really wanted to go back. So I reached out to a couple of contacts that I had made when I visited China for the first time, and I reached back out to them, and I was essentially looking for opportunities. One of those companies offered me an internship to teach English within their software company. When they offered that to me, I immediately jumped at the opportunity. I was like pumped to go back to China. I planned to only stay in China for 3 months, but I just loved it so much. So I wanted to extend my stay, and I began to make friends, and I began to start tutoring English on the side to make some more money. So while teaching English and tutoring English on the side was making me a lot of money, it just wasn't really making me happy. I really hated teaching English. And here again, I knew that I wanted to start my own business. I still had that like startup mentality, that startup drive. So I started to work my way into the startup scene in Shanghai. That's where I was living. And if you don't know, Shanghai kind of has a little bit of a startup scene going on, much like there is in Silicon Valley. And I worked my way, I started networking, meeting different founders, meeting different companies. And one of these companies offered me an internship in digital marketing. So I essentially took that, I started working there for free so that I could like work my way into the company and get some experience. And as the company continued to grow, I continued to get more involved. I started to add more team members. I started to get more experience. I started to be able to do more things. I started to take on more responsibility. And eventually I became the director of marketing or director of digital marketing for that company. Life wasn't bad. I had a pretty good job. I was getting great experience. I had a Chinese girlfriend. I continued to learn Chinese on the side, but I still wasn't working for myself. And that really continued to eat away at me. And it wasn't like I had a bad boss or anything like that. It just wasn't what I really wanted. I couldn't get away from the fact that I wasn't profiting off of my own business decisions. The opportunity wasn't that bad. I just hated the fact that I was working for somebody else. And I wanted to be able to have control over my own decisions and know that those decisions were going to benefit my business, not somebody else's. Somewhere around that time, my dad had actually lost his job. And I remember listening to a podcast about a guy that was selling yoga mats on Amazon. And I sent my dad that podcast. I'm like, Dad, like, here's this guy like selling yoga mats on Amazon. You should do this. I know you're looking for an opportunity. Like, you should do this. And that was probably the first little piece or the first Amazon nugget that I got wind of was from this podcast. And here I was like giving the opportunity off to my dad. I just thought it was like ironic. But I sent that to my dad and pretty much like never thought anything else about it. And then after about 3 years of living in China, I just like really couldn't take it anymore. I was really burnt out. I missed my family and I missed my friends. And I decided to move back home. 3 years was enough. I wanted to reset. I wanted to restart and move back to the USA and pick up again. So I broke up with my girlfriend. I moved back home to live with my parents. And I basically took about 6 weeks off just to like rest, decompose, like collect myself. After all, I'd just been like living in China for all this time. And I really didn't know what to do with myself. So after about that 6 weeks time, I started applying for jobs. I was like, I have this great experience from living in China and working there. Like, I've got to be able to find a good job now, now that I've built up this experience. So I started applying. Luckily, I had a pretty good conversation with my uncle, and he asked me a question. He's like, Lamar, what do you want to do? And I thought about it for a second, and I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a serial entrepreneur. And he's like, well, if you want to be an entrepreneur, then you have to start now. He's like, you're living at home for free. You don't have many expenses. You can defer your student loans. He's like, if you really want to be an entrepreneur, you have to start now. And this is a great time for you to do it. And that really triggered something for me. I was like, you're right. I'm here at home. Like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, I've got to start now. And that is one of the most important things about becoming an entrepreneur or starting a side business, is that you have to start now and you have to make consistent effort, consistent progress to drive yourself forward. You can't keep putting off this decision of more research or waiting to start later. If you have the opportunity, you already know enough of whatever it is that you want to start. If it's this Amazon FBA business, you already know enough information. Start consistently taking action and push you forward. Get you to that next step. You already have enough and you have to start now. So that's exactly what I did. I started pouring through all of my different business ideas that I had, that I collected in my journal, and I stumbled across physical products, and I did a little bit more research, and I came across how to sell online. I started doing research around that, and then eventually I stumbled into Amazon, and then later Amazon FBA. And little by little, the pieces started to click, and I was like, this seems like a very low cost way for me to bootstrap a business. Because here again, I had just moved back from China and I had absolutely no money, and I needed to figure out a way to start a business with essentially $0 or just a couple $100, reinvest those profits, and continue to just scale up. And Amazon FBA presented that opportunity. I felt like I could get a product going for quite inexpensively, list it and launch it on Amazon, get it selling, and then reinvest those profits. So I decided to come up with a concept or a physical product around metal wall art. And one of the main reasons for that was because I could utilize my mom's art studio, and she could help me do small batch manufacturing for the specific product. So we came up with 3 product ideas. We got all the metal. We made about 25, 50 units of each product. I did all the images, I edited the images, I did all the packaging, learned about the barcodes, packaged it all up, sent it into Amazon, learned how to do a launch, and launched it on Amazon. Unfortunately, the product really didn't sell. And I've made other videos all around why this product didn't sell. But it did teach me a lot about Amazon FBA, how to get up and running on Amazon. It also taught me a little bit about the supply chain management and how I knew that I wasn't going to be, or I didn't want to make the product myself. There's too many pieces of the supply chain that I was essentially involving myself in, and I knew that I wanted to outsource that. So on my next product launch, instead of me trying to make the product, I decided I was going to purchase the product. And I was able to find a wholesaler that had this specific product, and I essentially took their label off, and I made a logo, and I got some labels made down at Staples, and I put my label on their product and shipped that into Amazon. And that product started selling. And that was essentially my first traction on Amazon. I started selling 2, 3 units a day, and 3 units turned into 5 units. And then once I sold through those 50 units, I took that money and bought 100 units. And I took that 100 units, those all sold, and then I bought 200 units. So I kept just recycling that money, investing the profits in bigger inventory sizes, and I just kept taking that profit, and I just kept taking the revenue and profit there and investing in more inventory and purchasing it and flipping it. And then I started offering a second product, and then a third product, and soon 5 sales a day turned into 10 sales, and 10 sales a day turned into 15 sales. And right about that same time, I was doing about 20 units a day. A friend of my parents actually heard that I was up in my bedroom building an e-commerce business. And they had another friend who had, at the time, a mid-figure, 7-figure Amazon business. And they knew that I was involved with Amazon, so they connected us. And this other company really didn't know too much about Amazon. They were selling on Amazon, but they had really poorly optimized listings. They basically weren't running Amazon PPC at all, and they just, their knowledge around Amazon just wasn't very experienced at all. And here I came into the picture, and I was running a business from my bedroom, and I was able to get up and running like very quickly. Within 3 or 4 months, already start selling 20 units a day. And I had all these research methods, and I knew how to do the Amazon PPC, and I knew how to do the supply chain. Like I'd figured out all this stuff on my own. And here they had a US office and a China office, and they weren't even able to figure out how to do an Amazon listing correctly. So when I was able to show them what I was doing with my listings and the power of combining a physical product, selling on Amazon, and digital marketing, they were really blown away by that. So I started working with them part-time on a consulting basis. I was just helping optimize their listings, and I started to take over their Amazon PPC. So as my business started to grow, I was also helping them on the side, and I hired a graphic designer. I hired a local Chinese employee to start helping me source new and different products that we could find in China. It basically took me 2 years of bootstrapping my business, taking the profits from the inventory or the sales that I'd sold, reinvesting that before I even paid myself. So it took me 2 years before I even took a paycheck out of my own business. And then after about 2.5 years since I launched the business, I asked my sister to come on and help me full time. And then after I hired my sister, I asked one of my old friends from Shanghai if they'd be able to help me with sales and data analytics. So then they started to help me. So then at the beginning of 2019, or the beginning of this year, things started to really take off for us. A lot of the products that we had launched last year really started to gain traction or volume. I started my YouTube channel, just sharing my story, sharing my progress, offering help to other people that were interested in the opportunity. Of course, I started building my course. This was a big project for me at the beginning of this year. It almost took me 4 or 5 months for me to develop this course so that I could help even more people. And then I started building my Amazon video course, which took me almost 5 months to complete. Meanwhile, the company that I consult for, I still run their Amazon PPC campaigns to this day. And those PPC campaigns almost drive about 50% of all of the revenue for their business. And they're an 8-figure Amazon seller, which basically takes us up to today. And I just hired a logistics person. I just hired a designer to help us build out and expand our brand presence. We essentially have 6 people within the team now. We're all remote workers living all over the world. I live in Philadelphia. I have a pretty sweet apartment here in the city. I have a rooftop. I'm able to do what I want, when I want. I'm able to travel wherever I want in the world. Actually, this Sunday, I'm going to Barcelona, and I'll be there for a week. I'm able to buy the things that I want and spend my time doing hobbies. I'm a huge fan of CrossFit. I do CrossFit 5 times a week. I'm a huge fan of Lululemon. I listen to EDM music like all the time. This business model has transformed my life. I'm now able to do completely what I want, when I want, and it's really thanks to Amazon FBA. And that's really what I'm here trying to provide back to you guys. That's why I've started this YouTube channel. That's why I've created these courses, is because I want to present the opportunity to you as well. Because one of the main things that I was missing when I started was that I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a step-by-step process to follow. I was really lacking that. And in reality, that was one of the main missing things preventing me from being an entrepreneur. I felt like I needed someone to show me the ropes, to kind of hold hand me to an extent, and really give me that guiding pathway that would allow me to become an entrepreneur, to flourish in my own. And that's really why I'm here, and that's why I'm trying to give back to you guys, so that you have that person that can provide that for you. So I hope that I'm able to shed some light on my personal story. I hope that I've inspired you to go out there and take action. And I hope that you continue to watch my YouTube channel and you check out my YouTube course. And this is literally just the beginning. We have all of our processes set. I've set the infrastructure up. And now we can literally go to market with any product that we want and get it selling up on Amazon. So I truly believe that this is just the beginning. I hope that you guys have enjoyed my story. I hope that you stick around on the YouTube channel and that you'll check out my Amazon courses. And at the very minimum, please drop a comment below or hit that thumbs up button on the like button on the video here, and share your story with me. I'd love to hear from you and love to know where you are along in your journey. And without further ado, I'll see you on the next video.